Bring them over here, Albin. We need to move them on, a little over there.
We're in northern France on the coasts of the English Channel and more specifically the Somme Bay. As is the case every November, it's time for the flock drive. Roland Moitrel is accompanying his 1,000 sheep from the bay's salt marshes and taking them to the sheep barn for the winter.
I'm the furthest away from the bay. One of my colleagues has a barn behind. Another one lives here. He's closer than I am. I have the furthest to travel, around 11 kilometers.
The ewes and their little ones have been peacefully grazing in these vast open spaces, which are known as salt marshes.
It's part of the bay that is covered in marshland, and from time to time, these grasses are covered by a high tide, at least twice a month. It depends on the tide, but it can last 8 days, with 2 tides per day. The lambs are born towards the end of the winter, from the 15th of January onwards. They graze on the grassy areas, on the salt marshes, from the beginning of April, and once they get to the marshlands, they don't go back to the barn. They are reared on the marshes and watched over by a shepherd.
And this is where the famous salt marsh lambs have been reared since the 16th century.
There are 14 of us breeders. We breed between 1,500 and 1,800 lambs per year, and our lambs have been awarded an Appellation d'origine contrôlée designation.
The Somme Bay breeders obtained this designation of origin status in 2007, 2 years before their fellow breeders from the Mont-Saint-Michel Bay. These 2 locations are the only places in France producing salt marsh lamb. There are other products in France that also benefit from this status, like the Pyrenees or Aveyron milk-fed lambs. Very popular meat across France, production's increased by over 50% in the past 10 years. If the Somme Bay produce is to be given the salt marsh lamb label, then the animal has to be at least 135 days old before being slaughtered.
It's the amount of time they've been left to pasture on the Somme Bay marshlands that counts, and they must be born by a Somme Bay ewe. We're allowed 8 breeds, and then we crossbreed to make them more resilient.
This know-how produces one of the most sought-after meats in France, and restaurants in the Somme Bay only serve it between the months of July and January. In Crotoy, Chef Philippe Carré's main dishes are leg or rack of salt marsh lamb.
The rack is ready to be cooked. We fry it, skin side down to start with. For let's say 2 minutes.
Once it's browned, the rack is turned over and put in the oven at 200 degrees.
And we then wait 10 minutes until it's nice and pink. It's a very flavoursome meat and should be eaten rare. Unfortunately, some clients ask for it to be well done. It's understandable, but it's better to eat it rare or medium rare. It melts in the mouth. There's really nothing like it.
With the rack in the oven, Philippe Carré starts preparing a sauce from the lamb carcass.
This is what gives the sauce its flavour. The bones need to be cooked in the pan until they are well browned, not burnt, but well browned. Then we add carrots, onions and shallots, and a little bit of parsley. And we saute it all together. We need to continue cooking the carrots and onions to bring out the flavour.
He then deglazes with white wine before covering with water. The sauce is then left to thicken.
And here's our rack of lamb. It was left 10 minutes in the oven, so it's cooked.
Cooked to perfection, and now it's dressed.
We'll serve it with mashed vitelotte potato. The vitelotte is a regional potato.
He then adds the sauce and a pinch of Guérande sea salt.
People think it's salty because it's called salt marsh lamb, but this isn't the case. It really melts in the mouth. The meat is full of flavour. By browning the meat, we add this crunchy aspect to the skin. It's very tender on the inside and it melts in the mouth. The region is famous for its cockles and bouchon mussels, etc. But a lot of people do come to try the salt marsh lamb. From the restaurant they can see the lambs in the bay grazing, and a lot of clients actually go across the bay when they leave the restaurant to get a closer look at them.
But during the cattle drive it's the other way round. Roland and his nephews have been walking towards the sheep barn for the past 3 hours. And the unusual convoy has to travel along the road for the last remaining kilometres of their trip, and motorists stop to immortalise this extraordinary moment. The journey ends in this meadow. The ewes will enter the barn in a few weeks' time, where they'll spend the winter months and give birth to their young.